So here we can go through this and you can correct it. So number 1 was vegetable, number 2 is instrument, number 3 was college, 4 was nail, 5 was fence, 6 was basin, 7 was merchant, 8 was queen, 9 was scale, and 10 was goat. You got that, didn't you? Goat. Yeah, you should get goat. All right. How many got them all? Only one person. All right. Here's the other list. Lumberjack, skate, hedge, number 4 is colony, 5 was ducks, 6 furniture, 7 stocking, 8 pillow, 9 mistress, 10 dart. How many got all 10 of those? So a number of people. How many did better on this list than the other one? Looks like most people. How many did better on the first list? All right, so working a little harder, making more connections helps you memorize things, helps you remember. And that's what basically Bjork was trying to say in the video, that acquisition, sometimes people go for what makes it easy to learn, and unfortunately those things that make it easy to learn don't necessarily make it easy to remember. Sometimes it's better to make it a little bit harder, to add more to what you're trying to. Sometimes people think, well, my brain is like a jar. If I put too much in there, it'll spill out. I won't be able to, you know, I got to leave room, put as little as possible in there. But actually, you're better off putting more in oftentimes to remember something. Putting more in. And structures, this is an example of a structure to help you remember. There are several other structures. One is the timeline of history, the map of the world. There's only one world map. There's only one history. The structure of a language. You know, the grammar, what is a subject, what's a verb. So learning these things, these are structures that help you, you know, knowing the structure of a language helps you with foreign languages and with your English composition and so on. Understanding the map helps you understand history. Understanding history might help you understand the map. There are other structures that help you build your memory on. All right, so that's Bjork, and he was talking about things like that. And Loftus talked in her video about repressed memories. She's a professor now at UCI. She's probably about my age or a year older, so probably close to emeritus status. Still giving talks and doing research in the area of false memory. So one of the things that she has been pointing out is these people that claim to recover repressed memories, she regards them as bogus quacks that are causing more harm than good. There was a movement to try to convince people that they'd been molested as a child and had repressed it, and this was the cause of their mental problems. And she was pointing out that the psychotherapists, in the name of trying to do good for people, were actually giving them problems, making them think about, if you can imagine that you were molested, then you were, and it was your father or your brother or your uncle, one of them must have been the one to do it. You've got to accuse them and file suit against them and get revenge on them in some way or other. So the families were being broken up, lawsuits were being filed. And she said, is this really recovery of memories? And she said, no, they're creating false memories. And so now there's a whole area of research that she's sort of famous for, the false memory syndrome. FMS, if you look through the psychological literature, large numbers of articles about false memories. And she describes implanting false memories. She does research of this type, how the police question somebody can influence what they later remember. And so she has people witness a traffic accident, and then she asks various questions, including, did you see the broken glass? Just ask that question, you know, and some people say yes and some people say no. And then she's asked them, how fast were the cars going when they collided? Or she can not ask the people the question, did you see the broken glass? All right? How fast were the cars going when they collided? If she asks the question about glass, the people give 15-mile-an-hour higher estimate of the speed the cars were going for their memory. A lot of people say they saw the broken glass, but there wasn't any broken glass. She asked the question, did you see the broken glass? Makes it sound like she thinks there was broken glass, so the people think they're supposed to remember it. So they do remember it later. They'll swear that they saw the broken glass even though there was none. If she says, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, you get another 10 miles an hour, as opposed to if she says when they bumped, they get a lower number. And then the people will swear later, just because of the particular way you ask the questions, they remember a whole different story based on the questions they were asked and how they were asked. And she's been involved in a lot of cases where people are wrongfully found guilty based on eyewitness testimony. So she's oftentimes called as a witness for the defense in cases where basically the trial depends heavily on eyewitness testimony, because eyewitness testimony is very often polluted by experiences that are given to the witness that intrude and create false memories in the witness, which they're willing to swear to in court. So she does lots and lots of demonstrations. So hopefully you saw her video. If you haven't, by all means, you should see it. She's been attacked by and sued. So she's been brought to court and sued by the people writing these phony books, pop psych books with titles like Courage to Heal, that believe in the recovery of false memories, the recovery of repressed memories. So that's Elizabeth Loftus. What are some of the factors that affect the degree of compliance in the Milgram study? And what's the fundamental? Well, let's do this one and then I can bring up the slide. The fundamental attribution error you saw in the video, according to Zimbardo, the fundamental attribution error is to say that the reason somebody did something had to do with their individual personal characteristics as opposed to the social situation they were in. So why was it the case that there were these people who were willing to execute somebody else because somebody said, I want you to shoot him? And this person then went and shot him. And you say, well, that's because that person is a sadist or a criminal or a murderer. Why would you go shoot somebody just because somebody told them to? Obviously, that person needs to be tried and convicted. Well, this person told them to go do that. Or does it have to do with the situation? And according to Zimbardo, people pay too much attention to individual differences and probably too little to the social situation. Now, one of the social situations you saw in the video last time so we saw the part of the program, and hopefully you saw the second part of the program. If you haven't seen these videos, I recommend you look at them, especially the one on sensation perception, because then you get a chance to experience the illusions and see what they're like. I think some of the ones like the social psych video, getting to see some of the footage of the individuals that were doing the research, the interviews with the people. I think Jane Elliott's in the second video in that series. Seeing Jane Elliott and the brown eyes, blue eyes. How many saw that video? The brown eyes and blue eyes. I mean, seeing those people be interviewed years later, I think it's something you'll remember and interesting. Jane Elliott's the teacher who decided to create prejudice based on brown eyes versus blue eyes. If you haven't seen the video, I recommend that you do that. So here's a basic setup for the Milgram study. They told the guy that he was going to be training somebody else and he should give electric shocks to train the person. And what was it that surprised the experts? They asked these experts, psychiatrists mainly, and people who are supposed to be experts in human behavior, what percentage of the people, if they're just told to give shocks to some guy in the next room, will go all the way up. You can see they're labeled up here, 150 volts. They go on up to huge numbers. I forget what the maximum is, but they're labeled, you know, painful, dangerous, deadly, XXX. 450. You know, And 450, is that the value? So how many people would go all the way to the end? And they said maybe 1 in 1,000. Just the sadist would be the person to give all the shocks. Most people would refuse to give shocks. Americans, maybe somebody with a authoritarian personality that when they're given orders, they have to follow orders, like the Germans in World War II or something like that. And what did he find? 2/3 of the people went all the way. Here's some of the factors. So this is a question you were asked. Callett describes it in the textbook. Here's some of the factors that influence the degree of compliance in the obedience study. Now, if you have, and the biggest effect of the manipulations that he tried was you have somebody else who's willing to do it. So you have the confederate with him, who the guy says, give him the shocks. And the other guy says, oh, okay, I'll give him all the shocks. Versus you have 2 other people there. So there's 1 subject and 2 confederates. 2 other people that supposedly are in the same role of being participants. And they both refuse. They say, look, I'm not going to give the guy another shock. He's saying, hey, ouch and help, I'm not going to cause somebody else pain. Then the other person says, oh, if the other people aren't doing it, then I guess I won't do it. So basically it's a social effect that can either increase it, having other people who agree to go along with it, or having 2 other people who say, I refuse to do it, is what will encourage somebody to refuse to do it. Otherwise, all these others, you get about 2/3 of the people willing to do it. The guy says he has heart trouble, still 26 out of 40, so in that condition. And you heard in the video the guy was yelling through the wall, my heart is bothering me, let me out of here, you have no right to hold me here, let me out, let me out. And the experimenter says, continue, teacher. And the guy goes on and gives him the next shock. Yes, so you saw that. So, the experts, what did they do after the results came in? They had not predicted the results. They said, this hurts our self-esteem. This type of research should never be done ever again. So they immediately concluded. As a matter of fact, doing this research harmed the people who were participants in the research, because once they realized they were willing to give people shocks, why, they couldn't think about themselves in the same way that they had before. So that's one of the reasons you can't do this research. Nobody at a university can do the Milgram study or the Zimbardo prison study anymore because of the IRB, the institutional review boards that basically govern what kind of experiments can be done. However, guess who can do the research? Anybody who's not a scientist. And basically, who does the prison study? It's being done again today. Who does the Milgram study? It's called reality TV. It's being done all the time again. They've repeated all these studies. You can do it for entertainment, but you can't do it for science, basically, has become the rule. And so it's a kind of a strange irony that they set up these IRBs. I mean, the idea is, if you're going to study what would prevent HIV, you know, you're going to inject somebody maybe with weakened HIV virus. And somebody's going to say, okay, you can inject me with a weakened HIV virus. You don't want to just run up and sneak in. I mean, it's against the law for a normal person to run up and inject somebody with HIV, right? But you want to allow some people to do this to find out if the vaccine works. And there are nuns that have volunteered to be in these experiments already. So they've said, we are not sexually active. Some people believe them. You're supposed to laugh at that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. Anyhow, so they say, we're not sexually active, so we're not getting it other ways. And so we're willing to be injected with the virus, first to see if it gives you AIDS, and then to be injected with a live virus to see if it protects you from it. They're volunteered to do this. Now before, nobody's ready to do that research yet. But some scientists should be allowed to do it even though it's illegal for the general public. But the irony is, what's happened now is, you know, basically what's happening at universities is, anybody can do the Milgram study except university professors because they have to go through the IRB, which will not allow it because they say, well, that's, who knows, it might hurt somebody's self-esteem. You know, in my view, I mean, this isn't my particular area of research, but if I was in social psych, I'd be quite annoyed by the fact Zimbardo's been on television saying you know, and I told you about this last time, U.S. has gotten itself into a mess, created a real mess in Iraq. I mean, the whole idea of going to war in Iraq was a bad idea to begin with. But then once you go in there to unjustly treat people and torture them, basically violate the Geneva Convention, basically, you know, helping create, they brought people together that were natural enemies who became allies and are now the leaders of this ISIS movement. That's where they met each other. Zimbardo has commented on the fact that, you know, research of this type is not being done in the public, and the public is not necessarily aware of it. Well, that's just another type of research that needs to be done that is not being supported in this sense, in the sense of being prevented from occurring. All right, questions about the quiz, the issues we just went over?